Hey everyone, welcome back to the Punk Rock Horror Podcast, BandShowCase episodes, where we bring on underground and up-and-coming bands to talk about the music, talk about the band, and also showcase some of the music. Today is episode 11, and we're honored and to have the amazing Denny Jagard from 10 Foot Pole come on to talk about 10 Foot Pole. Now, you either know who 10 Foot Pole is or you don't. They were a huge underground fast punk band in the 90s. And they had a really strong name in the underground scene. And you know what? It was just a really fun episode to talk to him. It was really surreal too because, the dude's really down to earth, really easy to talk to, and it was just surreal in that aspect, being able to talk to him. You guys are gonna enjoy this episode. This episode's part of our June Ghouls and Gal month. The month we're dedicating to thank all you ghouls and gals for supporting the podcast and for helping us get where we are today. So we decided, to bring this on to make this the June episode, because this is going to be an hour long. You're going to love it. And honestly, I'm at that point where I'm so excited about it that I'm over explaining it. And you either love that or you hate that. But I think we can all agree that I should just stop talking and let's just get right into the interview. All right, everyone. Thank you again, and please stay tuned after the episode to listen to some new 10 Foot Pole music. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Punk Rock Horror Podcast Band Showcase episode number. I think this is 10 or 11 now. I'm a little off on the numbers. Forgive me. Obviously, the title says different. Point being, though, is we have an exciting interview today with the one and only Denny from 10 Foot Pole. Welcome, Denny. Thank you to come.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on this.
Yeah, no, this is exciting. We've definitely been talking about this for a while and talking about how exciting this interview is because you're one of the legacy bands that we've had on this podcast. Now, we've had a few others on here before, but...
Legacy's a nice way of saying old, right?
You know what, man? Everyone's too concerned with staying young. It's about growing old with grace.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good line.
You feel free to use it.
I do sound for Jimmy World, and a lot of times Jim Adkins says aging is not an option. That's basically kind of his way of saying, hey, I'd look younger if I could. But
oh man, yeah, I think we all would if we could. I mean, that'd be the dream, right? To be able to find.
Well, when you're young, you kind of want to look old. It's like, oh, when am I going to get a beard? When am I going to, get full height, get muscles or whatever? And then when you get older, you're kind of like, oh, kind of miss the good old days.
you get hit with responsibilities, and you're like, man, this sucks.
Yeah, like when I had a 6-pack and didn't have back pain and all that kind of stuff.
The good old days.
So yeah, we are a legacy band, but I don't know if you've heard our new record, but I'm trying to just keep it fresh and young and interesting and whatnot. So I don't think our music sounds like legacy music, and some of our fans are even mad about it. We could talk about that if you'd like to. But have you heard the new songs?
I have heard the new songs. I like them. It's exactly what I was expecting from 10 Foot Pole, and it was a welcome sound too because it's again, this is your first record in 10 years. I mean,
you were expecting it like that? Really? Did you say it was what you were expecting?
I wouldn't say. I guess to clarify, it was all that I was hoping for. Because I shouldn't say expecting, because to say I was expecting would be for me to assume that I was right in your guys' mindset of what you were writing.
Yeah, because I didn't even know what to expect, honestly. Like the process wasn't planned out, at least in terms of how it ended up. The process was, I'm going to write some songs, I hope they're good. And I was on the road doing sound for Jimmy World, and then I was on the road with Weird Al Yankovic, and I had an acoustic guitar with me, and I was trying to sing every day. Sometimes like on the sidewalks, sometimes in front of people. At first I was just alone, but then I got more courage because people started encouraging me to play more. And I kind of, over a period of about 2 years, I crept closer and closer to people, and to the point where I was actually doing acoustic shows on days off. And but all the while I was writing these songs. And I think that one part of this album, one reason that I think this album is really good, is that I was really picky about what songs I would do because I was singing in front of people. And on the other 10-foot pole records, a lot of times I just wrote a song in my bedroom and then we recorded it and then it ended up being on the record. But there was never that playing it in front of people and getting that feeling of whether the song was worthy or not. So I had a much more, a much higher bar of what was going to be worthy to play because I was standing on a sidewalk in front of strangers singing these songs. And if I was at all hesitant to do it, I would just throw the song away and start, writing a new one. And so it really came out. It wasn't like a planned thing, like, oh, we're going to make it exactly like it is. It was more like, what are some good songs? And then in the studio, Ryan Green and some of the guitar players we brought in, like different people brought in different new ideas that I wasn't even expecting. Like Ryan Green just whips out a keyboard and starts playing keyboard. And I was like, wait, this is a 10-foot pole record. You can't play keyboard. And he's like, watch me. And he did. And it sounded great. And it was just fun. It was kind of like the 80s and silly. And so we just went with it. And so I couldn't have told you even 6 months ago, I couldn't have told you like how much keyboard there would be on the record or like all the different crazy dueling guitar solos we have. A lot of that stuff was just kind of in the studio, having fun and being spontaneous and having people giggle while they're recording. So I'll call that a win.
Right on. I mean, that's really kind of exciting, and polarizing in a way too, to just come back to the scene with a new album. Now, Escalating Quickly, that is the new album that's out. That it's on Spotify and iTunes and seems to be everywhere for everyone to listen to. And you kind of already talked about the process for this album, and you mentioned the backlash. What has that been like, navigating all this backlash, and have you guys been handling it?
Well, as soon as I saw, Ryan playing keyboard, I was like, there's some people who aren't going to be happy about this. But, I grew up as kind of a anti-fashion, anti-conformist kid. I grew up in the 70s, and one reason I embraced punk was it was just do it yourself and do it how you want, and don't worry about what anybody says. And sometimes I do worry about what people say, to be honest. Like I read reviews or whatever, and it does hurt my feelings. But at the end of the day, I feel like I just need to do the things that I think are worthwhile. And when it came to the music, especially, right before this, about 2 or 3 years ago, we did a record called Setlist, where we did a bunch of our old songs and we kind of re-recorded them and a couple of new ones. And I felt like that kind of reestablished the identity of like who 10-foot pole was, so that new people coming in could have one record to kind of get our history and get like what is this band's background, what's their identity, and that's called Setlist. And I thought that kind of like sealed the deal on the past for us, that kind of said, okay, here's our history, but now we can just be free to make whatever we want, any kind of new music, and just make the best music we can. And that's not to say that we've gone down this path and that we won't ever play 90s skate punk again. In fact, maybe the next record will be real heavy and vicious. I don't know. But at this moment, these were the songs that came out, and I felt like they were the best we could do, and also just to do it in a fun way that felt really free. And that's where it came from. So as far as the backlash, I would say, as expected, there's some people who are just like, well, this isn't the 90s 10-foot pole, you should have got a new name or did something different. Or played it just like before, but most people haven't. And most people who've listened have gotten really excited about it. There were some people, especially, who at first heard it and was like, "What is this? Is it much different than I expected?" But after they listened to it a few times, they really kind of got it and got into it. And at the end of the day, if a song's good, the song's good. We could have played double time drums on it. We could have played louder rhythm guitars on it and less solos. But I thought it was fun to do. This is kind of like over the top production, like crazy vocal harmonies, a lot of keyboards, a lot of guitar overdubs with dueling guitars, just all kinds of shredding guitars. And at the end of the day, we didn't take away the old records. We just added something new on top of them. So if you really like the old stuff, please feel free to go back and listen to the old stuff.
Well, and that's kind of hitting on a similar conversation we had with the band Mixed Kid Friday about their song Long Distance. In that song, they have a breakdown that is very hardcore, more metal, and we kind of made the statement that when it comes to punk, it's all about going against conformity, right? So I mean, what's more punk than going against punk? And I think that's what really stands out to me about the new album is that you can tell you guys definitely went in there and just did what you want to do. That you made a record that you guys want to make, and to hell who hates it, and all the love to those who love it. And I don't think it's bad for you to take. To be hurt by criticism, to care what people think, because I think for all of us, no matter how punk we say we are, I think there's always going to be at least 1 to 10 people that we care what they think at the end of the day. So, man, we'd all be lying to ourselves if we said we didn't care. But going more forward, I mean, this is an exciting album. This is an exciting thing. Biggest question is, what is it like coming back to the mold? At 10 years later. I mean, obviously you said you've been working with Jimmy World and Weird Al Yankovic, which I would love to ask more questions about, but I do want to focus on 10-Foot Pole. What's it like coming back to form?
You can ask me whatever you like. My life's an open book. I'm happy to talk about it. A lot of stories end up talking about Prince because I used to work for Prince as well. But as far as 10-Foot Pole coming back, we never really left. When I first started working for Prince, we had one tour in Japan that could have lost me my gig with Prince because he asked me to stay and do sound for some shows that he had booked. But I had already committed to going to Japan. And so after that, 10-Foot Pole went on hiatus for at least a year or so. But then every time I could start bringing the band back, I did. And we started doing little tours, little shows here and there. And so it's not like the band ever broke up or disappeared. We just took time off, and it really kind of goes around, especially as an audio engineer for touring, I need to be available for me to be able to get an artist who's going to tour for a year and wants the same person to be there. I can't say, well, I'm available except in 6 months I'm playing at a festival in Slovenia. So this year, because I really think Escalating Quickly is strong and I really wanted to give it a healthy push, I've committed to doing 10-Foot Pole shows, which basically blocks my real career, my audio career. So it's a kind of a frightening financial situation. First off, because I paid to record the record myself. And so I'm basically taking a huge gamble, not only paying for the record, but also blocking my future work to do this. But I'm, as you mentioned, I'm in the legacy part of my life, and I just felt like I just love doing this, and I wanted to give it a fair shot and really get out there and push it and not have any excuses. If people like it, if people don't like it, then okay, but at least we did the best we could and went out there and gave it a fair shot. So I'm trying and just hoping for the best. Just yesterday, some neighbor kids were hanging out while I was working on the tour van, and they started asking me about, well, what's this van for? And I said, well, it's for my band to cruise around. And they were just like, what? You're in a band? And they ended up looking up the band on their phones, and then they listened and goes, who's singing? And I go, well, that's me. And they're like, oh. And to me, and they were like, wow, it's really good. And to me, just the idea that, kids, 15-year-old kids could randomly hear the songs and like them, to me, that gives me hope that it doesn't have to be just, the old 10-Foot Pole fans that are basically now mostly middle-aged guys. They're not the only possible audience we could have. And while I want those people to be happy with us, I'm not going to be mad if a whole bunch of new people get excited about the music. I don't know how to get it to those people other than working on my van in the yard. But I do like the idea that just an average person who hears the music could get excited about it.
Well, and I mean, that's where we're here to help you guys, is to get your music out to some new ears, new fresh ears, to hear you guys and hopefully get you some new fans. Sounds like a lot of the dedicated ones from the 90s are hit and miss, but let's see if we can get you some new ones and to get some fresh new faces at those shows.
well, most of our real fans from the 90s are pretty stoked. I mean, there's some people who are disappointed just because they want it to be fast. And, for people who don't know of us, we were kind of a 90s skate punk band, kind of similar to Offspring or NoFX or Pennywise. And so that double time drum thing is kind of like expected at this point. And this record, it's not that far from like a Green Day pop punk kind of vibe, but it's definitely far from that double time 90s skate punk that we were. And so people who really like us still hear all of the same. I mean, I wrote all the songs not all the songs, but almost all the songs back through, even we used to be called Scared Straight in the 80s. And so you can still hear a lot of my same patterns and my kind of similar lyrics or similar melodies that I write. Like all that stuff's still in there, I think. But it's just, I think, more musical, slowed down a little bit, and more kind of bouncy. Would you describe it that way?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's still, to me, on my personal opinion, just coming straight from me, listening to the new album compared to the old albums, it still sounds like you have that very core sound of that catchy feeling, that poppy, jumpy kind of feeling that made me really like your music. It made me really like your songs. And even though there is keyboards and there's a lot of solos, it doesn't really take from the overall energy that I'm still getting from the whole album. And I promise I'm not just saying that just because you're on the podcast.
No, I mean, I honestly feel that this music will appeal to a broad spectrum of people, and that people who liked the old music are still going to like. I mean, there's still a lot of the same, like, intense screaming vocals or whatever, that were kind of in the stuff over the years. It's just not quite the same. And I'm excited about it. And I mean, I hear very little criticism. I'm sure I could go find some if I go on the internet, and it would hurt my feelings. But that's also part of what I do as a songwriter and musician, is I try not to see too many. Like, I don't watch videos of us playing live, because if I do, I'll get inhibited. If I see me looking bad or singing bad or being criticized heavily, it's not going to make me a better performer. It's just going to make me more self-conscious and less willing to put myself out there. So I try not to analyze myself, because like, really, if I watch a video, then the next show I'll probably just stand there and not tell silly stories and not, go for the high notes or whatever else, maybe I looked foolish on stage. And I don't want to worry about if I'm being foolish or not. I want to just have a good time and hope that people love it and be really expressive.
I think no matter what, the right people will be at your shows, and the right people will be listening to your music, and because at the end of the day, there's always going to be people on the internet saying mean things about something or someone. I was one of those people at one time. And
oh, really? You were a troll?
way back when I was younger in high school and more angry at the world then.
Nice.
Yeah, I've grown up since then, and I've kind of just learned to let people like the things they like, and as long as it's not hurting me or anyone else, then more power to them.
I wrote a song about that. I wrote a song just to help me remember to be nice, and it's called "Don't Be a Dick." And I hope it doesn't come across as being like judgmental, like I'm bossing other people around. Really, I wrote it for myself. That when I had the choice of, should I be a dick right now or should I not be a dick? There's part of me that really wants to be a dick and a bully and super sarcastic. But at the end of the day, I really feel like the world's going to be a lot better if we're all nice to each other. And so I wrote that just to sing it to myself in my head, don't be a dick, Denny. And, yeah, I don't know if you feel like playing songs on the podcast, but if you do, you're welcome to play whatever you like or afterward or whatnot. Or if people want to hear it, 10footpole.com is the easiest way to kind of find things. TEN. 10.
Of course we do. Yeah, we actually play songs all the time. We showcase a lot of songs of every band that comes on here.
Oh, cool.
We'll go over that a little bit more after the recording, figure out how many songs you're comfortable with putting on this recording for people to listen to.
You can put as many as you want, as many as you think fits the show nicely, and it really doesn't matter to me which ones. I would recommend Don't Be a Dick, just since we just talked about it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to put that one on, because I did like that one too, and I'm glad you clarified that too, because when I was listening to it, I was like, he's either talking about one specific person or a lot of people.
I knew right when I wrote that song that it was special because I instantly wanted to share it with all my friends. I was just thinking like, oh, I got to call Steve and be like, Steve, I wrote this song. I was thinking about you and I wrote this song and it's just perfect. Like, and not say anything about it and then just play it for him. That would be a dick move in itself, really. And that's kind of the funny thing about it is that, like, even while I'm singing a song and trying not to be a dick, there's part of me that wants to be a dick. I can't help it.
I mean, if it's with your friends, that's totally different. With strangers, it's an entirely different story. But with your friends, it's okay. Don't even stress.
Well, yeah, there's like kind of being a subtle dick or being a full-on dick.
And I do have to say, side note, I'm also really happy that this album came out because not only is it fresh new music that we can all listen to, but it also came out on my birthday. And that's just like this was all meant to be. Is kind of
Oh, happy birthday. Nice.
Oh, thank you. It's already passed, and I already feel older as is. But no, 10-foot pole. So we kind of asked this question to everyone, and I'm sure you're a little tired talking about it, but maybe just give us a quick overview. How did 10-foot pole get started, and what got the wheels rolling on that?
Well, 10-foot pole started as, well, we really started as a bunch of different bands, but in junior high, around 1982, 1983, we basically, there was a lot of music around at the time, and we started noticing that girls paid attention to boys who were in bands. But also we just loved it. Like, we went and saw bands at the local fairs and stuff, and we thought, that'd be really fun to do. And so I remember running to our drummer's house, which Scott Rudinsky, who's now famous for being a baseball player and was the singer of our band at a different time. But when we started, he was the drummer, and we'd all run to his house. And, we started by playing rock music, but then we gravitated toward punk just because it seemed so sincere and fresh. And it was pretty simple. Like, at the time, I listened to stuff like Black Sabbath and AC/DC and like other kind of heavy stuff. But when I heard Minor Threat and Fear and 7 Seconds and bands like that, it was just way more interesting to me lyrically, like what you could do and what you could do with the energy of the drums and the people jumping around and doing stage dives. And so, especially back in those days, we went to all kinds of shows and we wanted to do it. We wanted to do everything. And so we became Scared Straight was the name. I mean, we had a bunch of different names over the years and a bunch of different people in the band. And, but the name that stuck for a while was Scared Straight. And, like, our first US tour was in 1985. And then we kind of went on hiatus at different times. Like, I went to college and whatnot. And then we came back around 93 with the album Swill. And then during that album, we decided to change the name because Fat Mike, recommended that we get rid of the straight name, straight in the name, because of the concern we were known as a straight edge band, which we weren't. Although, as when we were 14, of course, we were kind of kids, so it was kind of easy to be a straight edge band. But as we got older, we became 10-foot pole, which is a little more silly and a little more cerebral at the same time. And so it was the same band basically. So it basically grew from that, and we just kept going. And we've tried to stop at different points, but I guess there's just something about it that keeps drawing us back in. Now, when I say we, over the years, there's been all kinds of different people in the band. And so honestly, I'm the kind of the main songwriter, the main person who's stuck around. And a lot of other people have gone through different bands in their lives and kind of gone from band to band to band. Whereas for me, I've always stayed in the same band, but then had different members joining me. So, so back from 1982, like, I'm the only original, guitarist, singer, songwriter back through all the Scared Straight days. And some people, don't like that as far as criticism. There's some people who are like, well, if you weren't in the band in 1987, you shouldn't be here on stage. But the reality is that, especially if you're in a band that's not making money, you can't expect people to stick around and go on tours and, lose their day job so that they can be out on a tour losing money. So I've gone through all kinds of different band members over the years, and for whatever reason, I keep coming back.
Well, I mean, all props and commends to you for for sticking around and keeping the dream alive. I mean, it. For one thing, you're servicing all the fans that are dedicated and love 10-foot pole, and for you to come back and keep putting it on your shoulders and keep bringing in new members to keep the music alive and keep just doing shows is commendable, and it's badass, and that totally takes a lot of work. So props all around.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's not that I want to switch band members all the time. I'd rather not have to like teach people new songs all the time, but the reality is people just get better offers or they get sick of it, and you know, and there's even guys who are kind of still half in the band, like our one of our guitar players, Keith, played a lot on the record, but he's a DJ for weddings in Orange County, like really high level weddings, and so he literally can't leave town, or you know, he would lose his job, and you know, he makes a living at being a DJ, so I can't argue with that. Like, you know, what am I going to do? Say, you know, no, Keith, you got to come on the road and be in a punk band and lose money instead of sit there and play music and make pretty good money and stay home with your family and whatnot. So, you know, over the years, it's been like that. You know, some people get better offers and better things, or some people just get bitter and just can't imagine going on another tour where we're staying in crummy hotels and driving around in the heat and, you know, but then some people thrive on it. And there's part of me that loves it, and that's why I've kept doing it. And I take breaks from it. We get burned out occasionally, but especially when we have new songs that we want to play, and it just feels vital. And there's also something that I would say too, that a lot of our fans over the years, our shows have gotten more friendly. Like I think the people who are into the music kind of feel the vibe, and I don't want to get too cheesy about it, but when it's our show and people are singing along and having a good time, there's definitely like a friendly vibe that isn't common for all shows, especially not all punk shows. Like it's usually not like a macho that's going to beat each other up. It's usually a super supportive crowd that's friendly. And I don't know whether that's because of the lyrics over the years or just kind of the way we present ourselves, but usually a 10-foot pole show feels fun, and it feels like people feel engaging one another and supporting each other. So in case anyone's thinking about going to a show, please warm up your vocals so you could sing along, and also be prepared to be friendly. We appreciate that.
It's nice to hear. I mean, it's usually like, what, you got to prepare to throw down, prepare to get rough, and you never really hear prepare to get friendly at this punk show. We're going to dish out the hugs.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to get too touchy-feely, but at least I think even just having this conversation beforehand changes kind of people's vibe about what they expect. And so when they come into the room, there's already kind of an expectation that people are going to be cool. And once you expect other people to not be dicks, then you're less likely to be a dick too, and we could have a party.
Yeah, and I do love that. I do love that you make that preface and you have that before discussion that it's going to be a friendly show. Because I'm not going to lie, my wife, she was not at the punk at all. She's from Virginia, grew up on country music, loves country music, and there's nothing wrong with that. I give her a hard time about it all the time because I love her. But when I took her to a punk show for the first time, I had to tell her, I'm like, you know, it could get rough. You might get pushed around. It might just be easier to stay at the bar if you don't want that, you know. And it's kind of a bummer to tell someone that who doesn't know what to expect when it is a rough show. When you know 10-foot pole comes to town and it's we're a friendly show. We're not here to you know cause trouble or hurt people. Let's just sing along, dance together, and just have a good time. That's nice, and it really is.
I mean, with a little word of warning that just because we're friendly doesn't mean that people won't mosh in front of the stage. Like, right. I don't try to stop people who are doing that. So there certainly is still that factor of it's still a punk show, and there's people who, you know, for them punk is being aggressive, and as long as they're, you know, as long as they're not hurting people or, you know, I don't try to stop it. The way, like, say, Jimmy Eat World show, they'll stop it, but they're in a different position than I am. Like, you know, we're just lucky if people even come to the shows. And if there's a few people who come to the show who want to crash into each other in the pit right in front of the stage, I'm not mad at them as long as other people are not getting hurt. So,
Right on, man. Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, you're always going to have people that want to mosh and want to jump around, and then, that's always going to happen, but obviously we want to keep an eye on those people who are throwing fists and pushing people down, who are there to ruin other people's experiences. Those are the ones that can stay home and push their couch or pillows or whatever they want to go around. I don't know what they do. I can't tell them what to do at home. This is a show. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, I just wanted to have fair warning because the conversation that you had is probably appropriate. That conversation of like, you might feel safer by the bar, or at least kind of, feel the vibe out before you go right in front in the middle, just in case. Because you never know. Like, I mean, to me, it's exciting when I'm on stage and I see people dancing and jumping around. But yeah, if it was somebody's first time at a punk show ever and they didn't know to expect that, then, it's probably fair to have that little discussion. That,
you never know. You never know what to expect. I mean, to be fair, to her credit, she took it like a champ. Totally jumped up to the front and danced around and jumped around people. To be fair, it was a really small venue, but still, I commend her for jumping in at her first punk show and just getting in the nitty gritty. So that's a good jumping off topic though. Shows. What are the plans for you guys' shows in this near future that we got going on?
Well, if you go to 10footpole.com, you can see the currently announced shows, which starts May 24th. The one closest to you is, I assume, Denver, Colorado, which is, what is it called? Streets of London?
Yep, Streets of London Pub.
And that is May 29th. And right before that, oh no, I'm not looking at the thing. We actually are doing a little acoustic hit at a brewery. I should have the information in front of me, but so if you go to 10footpole.com, there's one big list of dates, but then there's another thing that's really a link to our Facebook events. And that events page has all kinds of details about things like, where to buy tickets, age, if it's a bar, there's age limits. But this first part of the tour is kind of North America. We did really well up in Quebec in the 90s. And because of that, we've kind of used that as an anchor, as a place that we can kind of go back to still these days. And so this tour is similar to the one we did last year, where we're basically heading up to Quebec to play some big shows. And then eventually we head across Canada and then back into kind of Seattle, Washington. I live in Boise, Idaho, so we're kind of like wrapping up in Boise, coming back home for me in Boise. But we're also submitting to other tours throughout the year. There's a couple of bigger bands that I can't say who it is, but they asked for people who wanted to join up with them on a tour, and we said yes, please. And haven't heard back, so that could be in kind of September, October timeframe. And then October, November, we're committed to a tour in Europe that I can't announce yet, but we're the middle band in a 3-band package, so we don't have control of the routing, but it's basically all over Europe and one show in London, I think. And I can't announce what it is, but that's exciting. And we're getting calls from South American promoters and also from Australian promoters. So it's just kind of waiting to see if we can make it happen. For me, as I mentioned, I'm blocking all my audio work. So I'm really trying to do this while I can. And at the end of the day, I just need promoters to cover the expenses. And, what my expenses are can be tricky. Obviously, going to Australia, there's going to be some serious flights and travel and whatnot. But so I'm just hoping for the best and trying to do what we can to just get out there and hope that promoters can sell enough tickets to make it worth their while to bring us out.
Well, we do have some listeners out in Australia. I do know that for a fact, and in some South American states. So, ghouls and gals, if you're listening to this, please come out and support 10 Foot Pole wherever they are playing in your country. If they're coming, please come support the show. Buy some merch. Buy a CD.
Oh, thank you.
Do. And help these guys out. I mean, this is a legendary punk band. You don't, when you got the bands like NoFX or Rancid, you usually catch them at a festival or had to pay high price. These are legit legends that you can see easily. So come out, support them. Pure and simple. You got no
Can I do
excuse.
another little plug for? I mentioned earlier that I paid for the recording on the record. I was trying this thing where like I'm kind of taking this big financial risk. The record's released by Thousand Islands Records in Montreal, and they've been super supportive. And they're covering the like making the vinyl and the CDs, and they're doing a lot of work, and really appreciate it. But basically, I personally covered the recording part of the deal, and mastering, recording, and the artwork. And so for me, that was a huge investment of my family's money. And I shouldn't say that. That was a huge investment of debt. And but the one thing that I'm hoping to do is to crowdfund kind of support for future records. And so we started a Patreon thing where people who really like the band can sign up even for just $1 a month. And that not only supports the recordings, but it also gets you on an email list so that if we do have touring, if I have like a last minute announcement, I could just send an announcement out on there. Whereas on Facebook, for me to even reach all the people who said they like the band costs money. But Facebook makes us boost the post now.
Yeah.
And like if you don't boost the post, you will not reach all of the people who liked your page. And that's pretty frustrating because, like let's say we have one date change or a show gets moved or something. All the patrons, I can just put out an announcement and they get that information right away. So that $1 a month, to show our gratitude, those people get early access to music. They get podcasts that we do, videos, and the information. And there's higher tiers with other things you can get, such as a shirt every so often and guest list spots. But I just wanted to plug that because really for us to be able to keep making music, if people really like the band and want to support, that's a great way they can support the band and get some benefits, and it helps us with being able to record in the future. The way to find is 10footpole. There's a thing that says something like how to support 10-foot pole, and that's a Patreon is the website that controls that.
And
but thanks so much for letting me make that little plug there.
Hey, not a problem. And what we're going to do to help you out, we're going to include that Patreon link in the episode notes in the description below so people can click on it, go check it out, and become a supporter. And I think that we might just become a 10-foot pole supporter as well, because I honestly didn't know that you guys had a Patreon until you just mentioned it, and that's exciting.
Thank you.
So, and we totally get that frustration too with Facebook. They do the same thing to us. They hemorrhage everyone out of money just to boost posts, and it's completely irritating and dumb, especially since it's like Instagram and Twitter doesn't do that, and it's we can go into a deep dark hole about our frustrations with Facebook.
Yeah, I mean it's tough because it's like it's great that people are connected, but it's so brutal that. I understand they have to make money and that's their thing, but it really pushes us to do things that are essentially spam. And I don't want to spam people. I don't want to be like, hey, I thought you'd like my band. So, I don't know. I just don't want to be that guy. So, it's tricky.
I was just going to say, I would argue that the difference is, though, that you're providing rewards for people to pay to follow you. You're providing music, you're providing podcasts, you're providing a lot of great content that you don't normally see with anywhere else or a lot of other bands, really. So I think you're valid, and I think you're giving good rewards if it counts for anything.
I try to. I think some of the rewards are more extreme. Like when you get the record, there's inside the vinyl, there's a whole bunch of faces in there, and those are what we call our super patrons. So like the people that are at the $10 tier basically get some rewards that include guest list spots at shows, and they get their face on the shrine to the super patrons. So in case you're wondering what that is, that's basically people who are subscribing at a higher tier. But even at just the $1 tier, you still get early access to music and the podcasts. And for me, the most important thing is that email, that we're connected, and you can write letters and I'll answer them. And it's kind of an instant, easy connection that, especially when we're booking tours, it's so hard, if something changes even slightly, it's just such a bummer if a show, like let's say a show gets moved to a different venue, how do you reach all the people? And that's, I don't want to spend $200 on Facebook to reach people in one city,
Yeah, no, I could definitely see your frustration. I got a couple more questions for you, and then we'll get you packed and head out for the day. So one thing is that and we try to ask this to all our veterans, all of our legacy bands that come out here, and sometimes we have time for it, sometimes we don't. One thing I want to ask is, what is some advice that you have to some of our younger bands that might be listening, or some of our younger artists who are thinking of getting into music? What would be some advice you would give them that you wish you had?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, I guess I would say try to stay balanced. And the balance between being able to provide for yourself with, and your family or whatever you do over the years, it's kind of like being diversified and being well-rounded. You don't want to become, I mean, it's kind of like you could decide, I'm going to be the greatest guitar player ever, and maybe you will be, but maybe you'll also just be starving. And that's a tough call. I mean, maybe you'll be, the Beethoven of whatever instrument you play. But I would recommend at least being aware of finances and other jobs that you could do to make money. And preferably, if you're going to really tour, try to find jobs where you can come and go as you please. Like jobs that are always in demand, or where you don't need to be there all the time. Maybe you work from a computer so that even while you're on tour, you could do it from the road. But keeping a balance between assuming, it's kind of like if someone decides they're going to be a professional basketball player. It's like you don't want to not go to college and just play basketball all the time, because there's part of you that might, in case you don't make it or in case you get injured for whatever reason, at some point it'll be good if you have something to fall back on. But I also would say that as far as being a musician, it's really easy to get discouraged with people who are better than you. Like, especially with the internet now, you see like some 5-year-old kid in Vietnam or something can play guitar than you ever will. Like, there's no way you'll ever be that good. And that's really discouraging. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily that talented or good at one instrument, but who might bring something else to the table. At the end of the day, music's just something that's fun to listen to while we're doing things. You don't necessarily have to be the greatest pianist to have an interesting song. There's a lot of bands like the Ramones that just play very simple music, but there's something about what they did that draws people in. So when I look back, I always wish I would have just practiced a little bit every day. And I started doing it the last 2 or 3 years with acoustic guitar. But I'd be really good now if I would have played 10 minutes a day. But I never thought I would be doing this all my life. I just always thought, well, I'll get a real job and be a doctor or a lawyer or something. And so I never kind of took it that seriously. But in hindsight, even if I would have just practiced a little bit a day, it adds up. So I would say the balance goes both ways between being good at what you do, but also having a fallback so that in case things don't work out in the music world. Because sometimes when you put pressure on yourself to make a living at doing music, it's not fun anymore, and it ends up really hurting your music, as opposed to if you just decide that you only want to do music to be fun, then it gives you more freedom to just be creative without needing that to pay your rent.
Right on. I mean, that is some sage advice, everyone. I mean, if I apologize, excuse me. If you're going to get any sound advice, I think that is some solid one to take away. Is find that balance, find that cushion, and make sure you can support the thing that you want to do, especially if it's music. Make sure you have that way to support that. Last question I want to ask you, and then we'll get you out, is, and we ask this of all of our bands, all of our artists, what is one or two crazy stories that you're willing to share on the podcast from a show that you have played or have been to?
I think one of the most fun shows we ever did was before I could even drive at the Cafe de Grand in Hollywood. And, it's kind of one of those things where sometimes you get lucky and sometimes things just work out your way. But we were about to play down in the basement of this kind of dungeon kind of club in Hollywood. And there were probably maybe 50 people in the show. But right before we were going to play, all of a sudden the riot police showed up upstairs, and there was some kind of altercation or something. And so there was essentially a riot outside. So the club let everyone in for free. So we had like 300 or 400 people pack the place, and it was our best show ever, especially because people were so excited, I think, because they almost got beat up by police. And then the next thing they know, they're just at a punk show and we're singing and people are dancing around, and the adrenaline was so great. So I'd say that was, I don't know why, but when you asked that question, that was the first one that came to mind for me. And that was probably around 1984, 1985, the Cafe de Grand.
Typical came to save the day. Well, everything terrifying is happening outside.
Actually, that time we were called Scared Straight. So we were Scared Straight.
Scared Straight came to
it's the same band. We just changed the name. So
Scared Straight by a 10-foot pole. We'll give it that name and say that you guys saved the day and provided these people an amazing show that they never forgot, and they're probably still telling their children and their grandchildren to this day. I don't know who's all that.
I'm probably the only one who even remembers that, but for me it was interesting, and I got involved in political things later in college and whatnot, so I saw a lot of riot police, but at the time, that was my first time seeing, police actually charging into a crowd, swinging their clubs and beating people. And it was like, wow. For a 14-year-old kid, it's like kind of like instantly kind of changes your perception of how what's going on in the world and watching all these people getting clubbed. So, good times.
You did a service, especially during your hectic times. So props to you and the band, and that's just badass. So we kind of talked about it already, where everyone can find you to support you. Obviously, Patreon, but to make it clear, one more time.
10footpole.com.
Perfect.
The easiest place that has the links to all the other places. And please don't be too critical of 10footpole.com. Doesn't look terribly fancy. And that's because we're a DIY operation, and my 15-year-old son is really good with computers, but he doesn't really care too much about his dad's project. So he keeps it running for me, but he's not that invested enough to where he cares about how it looks. So it does look a little DIY, like DIY in a not artistic way. But the main thing is that all the links work. So it's 10footpole, TENFOOTPOLE.com. And then from there, there's links to tour dates, the Facebook events page, the Patreon site, places where you can order merch, places where you can hear the new record for free, like streaming the record, places where you can order vinyl and CDs. But really, I really appreciate you putting the time in, inviting us, and hope to invite people out to the show, and hope you all have a good time if you do come. And I hope you like the new record and give it a listen. The new record has a lot of different types of sounding songs. So if you listen and one doesn't tickle your fancy, I wouldn't give up on it quite yet. Like try a couple different songs, because they could surprise you. Just the breadth of how different some of them are. Goes kind of from metal to country almost.
You heard it there, girls and gals, and please support 10-foot pole. I'm sorry, I tripped over my words. 10-foot pole. I know you're all amazing when it comes to supporting bands and supporting independent creators. So please help 10-foot pole out. If they're coming to your town, go to their show, buy a shirt from them, and if you see Denny or any of them, let them know how awesome that show is going to be. With that being said, all the links you can see below. And, thank you again, Denny, for coming on. This was badass.
Oh, thank you. Take care, guys. Feel free to call up again if you ever want us to swing back and talk. I could talk about audio stories or bands or whatever you like.
We'd love to. I would love to hear some stories about Weird Al Yankovic and Prince.
I've got some good ones. Most of them I save for my podcast, for my Patreon, for the 10-foot pole patrons. But
Oh, wow.
but yeah, I'd love to. Just let me know.
Badass. All right, then. With that being said, we're gonna sign out. Thank you again, Denny, and thank you again, ghouls and gals. Please help out 10-foot pole, support them, listen to the music, and tell your friends and family about them. All right, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Cool. Yeah, yeah. Whatever you need to do. Yeah. I saw some. Yeah, I saw some. There were times when I lost you for a second, but I think I've got it. I'm gonna pause it.
There you have it. There is another successful band showcase episode. A huge thank you to Denny from 10 Foot Pole, and much luck to them on their tour and their new album that just came out. Ghouls and Gals, if you're listening, you can get the album on Spotify and kind of just wherever you can stream music. Please listen to it now, and if you're a little undecided, I bet these next songs they're about to play you're going to love and will win you over. And with that also being said, please follow and support 10 Foot Pole in the episode notes below. And if you have any band info and you want to come on the podcast, please send your band info to punkhorrorpodcast@gmail.com. Send us, just your band name, your info, and we'll try to get you on the podcast in time. One thing I do want to preface is right now we are very backlogged on band interviews and people coming on. We're all the way backlogged all the way through August right now. So just be patient with us as we reach back out to you and reply to you. We're gonna get you on the podcast, promise. But with that being said, let's just jump right to it, guys. Let's jump into these new songs from 10 Foot Pole.
Creeping up beside a chair, take out my phone, there's no one there. Look down to get Don't be a dick. 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 As a kid, I liked the Beatles, and then Styx and Yellow. Roller skated backwards to disco. Ass kicked 'cause my school book said Devo. I learned to cross town rivals when a car of massive jocks. That's what school I attended, and then pelted me with rocks. I poured sugar in their gas tank. The proud Mustang got so sick. That day we learned the lesson. Don't be a dick. 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 Studied history and religion in the schools where I was punched. My funny hair deeply offended. A delinquent bought me for my lunch. And all the books and Bibles, social theory and explanations can be summed up in a minute. Aggression triggers escalation. No one likes to be assaulted, getting poked with a burning stick, unless you got permission. Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. You can call it your special goal.